Merry Christmas, Doctor Who fans. We're back. We're here to talk about the Christmas special, The Church on Ruby Road. James, it's great to have Doctor Who back on Christmas Day, but what did you make of this episode?
So I was, I think, potentially a bit controversially, fairly mixed on this one.
Okay.
There was a lot I liked in it, but there were a few things which I wasn't so sure on. I thought that the sort of setup for the future was great. I thought Ncuti and Millie were great, which I'm sure we'll come on to down the line. But I just felt the pacing for me wasn't quite right. I felt like there were some slow bits towards the end which didn't quite work for me, and the resolution I felt was quite rushed and quite easy, I suppose, considering the sort of the threat which was set up. So yeah, there were a few little issues for me there, but what did you think?
Yeah, I think we are at odds, I'm afraid, because I was a big fan of this episode. I think the thing that really appealed about it to me was Russell T Davies coming back. You don't know exactly what he's going to do with the show. Obviously, we had the 60th specials, but they were very much about kind of celebrating a purple patch in the show's history. What you've got here with this special is his opportunity to really set out his stall, you know, what Doctor Who is going to be going forward. And it could have just been kind of same old, and it really isn't. I think the show feels very different. There's a fresh energy about it. You know, he's talked about Doctor Who edging towards fantasy, and there's definitely a feeling here, isn't there, that everything's kind of a little bit heightened. It doesn't have the same feeling as like Rose back in 2005.
No, definitely. I mean, that's you see that right away with the singing sequence
Yeah,
where
right.
they both burst into song.
Yeah.
Which what were your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I mean, obviously we knew the Goblin song was coming, and there had been hints here and there about Ncuti and Millie also having a verse of their own. But yeah, that moment actually, for me, it worked. I think because, as I say, everything building up to that did feel heightened. It did feel a little more fantastical. It's more dreamlike. It's a kind of Doctor Who we've not seen before. But I loved it. I think it injects a fresh energy into the show that it really needs. Like, you definitely couldn't have imagined Christopher Eccleston and Billie Piper bursting into song in Rose, even though, of course, she does have that musical background. But here, for me, yeah, it just worked.
No, there is that, as you said, there is that sort of heightened atmosphere throughout. I think I was totally on board with that and the sort of and the tone of it. That moment, I don't know. There is a part of my brain which just tries to work it out logically and tries to go, well, how could they do it? Maybe they can. Maybe it's you're trying to come up with an answer, and that's not going to be the case for everyone. And I don't think it's meant to be the case. But it's just, I think, the way the show has sort of wired my brain to think about it. But
I was waiting for an explanation as to why that happened, and then none came, and I was like, I guess that's just the show now. But we should talk a little bit more about Ncuti and Millie. Obviously, we'd seen a little bit of Ncuti before in The Giggle, but how do you feel they worked as a partnership?
I thought they were absolutely brilliant. I think that was by far my favourite thing about the episode, and it's why I'm still incredibly excited for the rest of the season. You know, as I say, I was a bit mixed on this episode, but everything that it was setting up in terms of that partnership worked really well for me. I thought that he was such a sort of burst of energy and so different than, some of the previous Doctors. He's got so much sort of charisma and charm. You know, he's not the sort of bumbling Matt Smith, Jodie Whittaker style, but he's not the sort of, Peter Capaldi stern. He's like, he is something new. He's not even quite the David Tennant version of sort of cool and charming. He's like one up on that, I think. He was brilliant. And I thought Millie as well was great. I thought that role, it's a really interesting sort of companion setup that we don't know her backstory, and we're going to learn about that. I kind of hope that it doesn't get a bit overshadowed by the mystery, I suppose, is the one thing. You know, obviously we kind of had that with Clara in season 7, where I feel like she was a little bit overshadowed by the mysterious, the impossible girl sort of storyline. So I hope that it's something maybe, a bit smaller scale, and we learn more about her as a person aside from that. But I thought she was brilliant in the episode.
Yeah, I agree. I think she was great. And I think with Ncuti, obviously we had seen a little bit of him previously, but actually I thought he was even stronger here. I really loved his performance. And I'll be honest, there's a little bit of me that when I saw the images and the preview footage of him dancing in a club, I was like, Ncuti himself is very cool, right? And I'm like, is the Doctor going to be too cool? And I think what they struck a really nice balance in that he is cool, he is charismatic, but actually there is still enough of what you recognise about the Doctor in there. He is still quite eccentric. He does have that slightly off-kilter energy. He feels very alien, and I'm really glad we didn't lose that. We should talk a little bit as well about some of the mysteries, some of the story arcs that this episode sets up. I suppose chiefly the mystery of who is Ruby's birth mother. What are you thinking about that?
Well, I'm thinking it's somehow Ruby herself or something that's carrying the baby.
That would be very Doctor Who.
Yeah. I just don't know, but I mean, I think it's something which is probably going to have to play out throughout the season for us to get any grips on, because it's an interesting, arc. But I'm not sort of looking back to the past of the show and thinking, oh, maybe it's this person or this. But I kind of hope it isn't, because I feel like, as we said, this is a fresh era. I kind of hope that it's not sort of, oh, it's this character you've forgotten about from 10 years ago kind of thing.
Yeah.
But no, as a concept, I think it's a good, gripping sort of story arc throughout the next season. But what did you think?
Yeah, well, Russell T Davies has talked a lot about how he wants this season to feel fresh, this upcoming season. We're not going to see, allegedly, the Daleks, the Cybermen. So it does feel like that's going to take the show into new directions rather than it be, I don't know, the Rani or something. But on that point, we should talk about Anita Dobson's character as well, Mrs. Flood, who seems to be just Ruby's neighbour, but there's a mid-credits sequence, so if you tuned out early, you missed that, where she reveals that she knows what a TARDIS is. She then looks into the camera and winks, which, if we're talking heightened, that's about as heightened as you get. But it's Christmas Day. So again, there's that mystery, isn't there, of like who she might be.
Yeah, and I don't have any particular theories at this point. That does feel like it might be more going back to Doctor Who past rather than sort of a distinctly new villain. But who knows? I just, Mrs. Flood, could be anything.
Yeah,
really.
Well, and my brain starts taking over, like River Song, Amy Pond, Flood. Is it all connected? There's also the possibility, of course, we saw that mystery hand come in, pick up the Toymaker's golden tooth, which contains the essence of the Master. Sometimes when I'm talking about Doctor Who, I sound absolutely crazy, but that's what happened. Could she be the one who's retrieved the golden tooth? Who's
possibly, but then who does that make her? What relation does she have to the Master? Lots. There are so many things that have been set up over this one and the 3 specials that I'm struggling to sort of remember all the different threads, but it feels like there's going to be a lot to deal with in the next season.
Yeah, definitely. Really excited for the next season. But let us know what you thought of The Church on Ruby Road, and be sure to head to radiotimes.com for all of our Doctor Who coverage.